Welcome. Tonight, we invite you to step quietly into a world far removed from the dazzling images of space heroes and roaring rocket launches. Imagine a place where the rhythm of life is measured not by excitement or triumph, but by routine, discipline, and endurance. A place where dreams of soaring beyond the stars coexist with long hours of waiting, physical discomfort, and solitude. This is the world of the Soviet cosmonauts. Picture yourself waking in a simple room, the pale light of dawn filtering through narrow windows. The walls are bare, the air cool and still, carrying the faint scent of worn concrete and aged wood. Outside, a cold wind stirs the bare branches of distant trees. You are far from home, enclosed within walls that seem to press inward. A place where every sound echoes softly and the quiet weighs heavily. Your day begins not with choice, but with obligation. A soft murmur of voices outside the door, the distant clatter of boots on concrete floors. The routine is strict and unyielding. You rise, dress, and prepare for the day ahead, knowing every moment is scheduled, every movement observed. Privacy is a luxury you do not possess. Breakfast is simple and functional, a thin slice of black bread, porridge with a hint of bitterness, a cup of tea that is more warmth than flavor. The clink of spoons against bowls mingles with the low hum of conversation, voices muffled and careful. No laughter, only the steady exchange of soft words, each one measured. Your thoughts drift as you eat, to the mission ahead, to the long hours of training that await. There is no rush, no excitement, only the slow, steady pulse of preparation. You breathe in the cool air and feel the weight of the spacesuit waiting for you, a heavy reminder of the path you have chosen. Outside, the sky is a muted gray, a curtain of clouds stretching endlessly. The cold seeps through the windows, brushing your skin with a quiet chill. You think of the stars, distant and unreachable, flickering beyond the atmosphere you will one day leave behind. The day unfolds in slow motion, a series of exercises, drills, and checks, each one precise and repetitive. Your body aches from the stiffness of the suit, the strain of simulated weightlessness. Yet your mind remains alert, your senses tuned to the smallest detail. Every breath is measured, every movement calculated. There are moments of stillness, too. A brief pause between commands, the soft murmur of voices in the hall, the distant hum of machinery. These are the spaces where your thoughts wander, where the vastness of space feels both near and impossibly far. As the hours pass, the monotony settles in, wrapping around you like a soft blanket. The smell of rubber and metal fills the training rooms, mingling with the faint scent of sweat and dust. Your fingers grow numb inside the gloves, your legs heavy beneath the weight of the suit. You remind yourself that this discomfort is temporary, that it is a necessary part of the journey. And when night falls, you return to the dormitory, a small, shared space where the walls seem to close in even tighter. The lights dim, the quiet deepens. You lie on a narrow cot, the mattress hard and unyielding. The hum of distant generators fills the silence, a constant reminder of the world outside. Sleep comes fitfully, broken by the demands of duty and the endless ticking of a clock that never seems to slow. Outside, the wind whispers through the trees, carrying with it the faint promise of the unknown. This is the life of a Soviet cosmonaut, not the glory or the spectacle, but the quiet endurance, the slow passage of time, and the unwavering commitment to a dream that stretches beyond the stars. You wake early, before the sun has fully risen, in a small room that barely shelters you from the cold. The walls are bare, painted a muted gray that reflects the overcast sky outside. The air is cool and still, thick with the scent of worn fabric and lingering traces of morning dampness. You move slowly, feeling the stiffness in your joints from the night's restless sleep on a narrow cot. Outside your window, the world is quiet. Bare trees stand silhouetted against a pale sky, their branches reaching silently. Somewhere far off, the muted clang of metal echoes faintly, a reminder of the machinery that powers the training facility. You rise, pulling on worn clothes that offer little comfort against the chill. The floor beneath your feet is cold and hard. In the bathroom down the hall, the water is barely warm, a quick splash against your face to chase away the lingering fog of sleep. Breakfast awaits in a small dining hall, a space functional and unadorned. The air here smells faintly of boiled cabbage and stale bread. The tables are long, with chipped paint, and the chairs scrape softly against the worn floor. Around you, others move with similar sluggishness, their faces drawn and eyes tired. Your meal is simple: a thin slice of black bread, a spoonful of porridge, and a small cup of weak tea. There is no rush, but no relaxation either. The clatter of utensils is soft, subdued. Conversations are few and low, words careful and measured. The food tastes bland, often cold, but nourishing enough to sustain the body through the day ahead. You swallow slowly, feeling the heaviness in your stomach that comes with uncertainty and routine. Outside the window, a thin drizzle begins, tapping gently against the glass. The world seems to slow in response, the rhythm of raindrops steady and unchanging. After breakfast, you prepare for training. The spacesuit lies in wait, heavy, rigid, and confining. You slip into its thick layers, feeling the coarse fabric brush against your skin. The helmet is cold as you lift it, the visor fogging slightly as you secure it in place. Movement becomes awkward, your limbs stiff within the suit's embrace. You flex your fingers, noticing the limited dexterity. Each step requires care and concentration. The suit's weight presses down, a constant reminder of the challenges that await beyond Earth's atmosphere. The training halls are vast and echoing. The walls, lined with metal panels and mechanical equipment, seem to absorb the sounds of footsteps and soft commands. The air smells faintly of oil and rubber, mingled with the subtle thames of perspiration. You join your fellow trainees, each clad in similar suits, their faces hidden behind visors. The instructors' voices carry through the space, firm, clipped, and relentless. The drills begin. Simulated launches, emergency procedures, weightlessness exercises. Hours pass in this cycle of repetition. You move through tasks that test your strength, your patience, and your focus. Muscles ache beneath the suit. Joints protest the unnatural postures, yet the pace never slackens. There is no room for distraction or complaint. Between exercises, you find brief respite in quiet corners. The chill of the air seeps through the suit's seals. You breathe deeply, tasting the recycled air trapped inside your helmet. The soft hum of machines continues unabated, a constant backdrop to your efforts. The monotony is broken only by occasional announcements or the shuffle of boots on concrete. Your thoughts drift to family far away, to the vastness of space that beckons beyond this place, to the uncertainty of what lies ahead. In these moments, the reality of your situation becomes clear. The life of a cosmonaut is not one of glory or celebration. It is one of endurance, of quiet sacrifice. It is the slow accumulation of discomforts, the long hours of waiting, the unyielding discipline. Your hands grow cold inside the gloves. The rough fabric scratches at your skin beneath. The helmet presses lightly against your temples. Your breath forms faint clouds in the visor, and the stale air feels heavy with each inhalation. As evening approaches, you return to your quarters, a small shared space with peeling paint and narrow beds. The light is dim, casting long shadows across the room. You undress carefully, peeling off the suit layer by layer, feeling the chill as warmth leaves your skin. The routine of cleaning and preparing for the next day follows. Equipment is inspected, suits hung carefully to dry. Your body aches from the day's exertions, but there is no relief yet. Dinner is as simple as breakfast, plain, unseasoned food eaten in quiet company. Conversations are muted, smiles rare. The air is thick with fatigue and a shared sense of isolation. Night falls early in this place. The heating is weak, and the cold creeps into the corners of the room. You lie on the hard mattress, listening to the soft hum of distant machinery and the faint rustle of footsteps in the hall. Sleep comes slowly, fragmented by dreams and the ever-present weight of responsibility. Outside, the wind sighs through the trees, carrying with it the quiet promise of another day of preparation, endurance, and waiting. This is the rhythm of a Soviet cosmonaut's life, not the triumph of spaceflight. It is a world of slow, measured persistence, a world that shaped the first steps beyond our Earth. You may not have heard his name, Valentin Vasilyevich Bondarenko, not a name inscribed on moon plaques or spacecraft modules, not etched into the pantheon of heroes. His was a quieter orbit, brief, sealed away in secrecy, and almost erased. But he was there at the beginning. And his story begins not with rockets, but with the soft thud of boots on snow in Kharkov, Ukraine. It is the year 1937. Valentin is 10 years old. His world is one of quiet poverty and subtle discipline. His father, a military officer, believes in rules, in routines, in the dignity of service. Learning to fly not just with hands, but with eyes, scanning instruments, reading terrain, sensing the wind. Flying is not freedom here. It is structure, repetition, endless corrections. He excels. His mother teaches music, hums quietly while she works. The house is cold in winter, the windows fogged with breath and frost. The stove clicks and hisses as it struggles to warm the single room where they sleep, eat, study, and dream. You resealed inside rotating centrifuge capsules that press your chest so hard you feel your heartbeat in your teeth. You sit in pressure chambers for hours, days sometimes, to simulate deep space. You float in underwater tanks, practicing for weightlessness. He isn't the loudest, the strongest, or the fastest, but he is calm, collected. He absorbs pressure like a sponge. The doctors like him for this. So do the officers. There's a fold-down cot, a small shelf with books, and a port window through which doctors can watch. Meals come in steel trays, passed through a decontaminated slot. There is no human contact, just static voices over an intercom, and the rhythmic hiss of air cycling through the system. Every meal is calculated, every motion observed. He wakes, exercises, eats, writes in a log. He listens to pre-approved music. The chamber smells faintly of aluminum, plastic, and something slightly acrid, perhaps the disinfectant. From a young age, Valentine draws aircraft. He sketches them in the margins of old school books, notebooks handed down from older children. Here, they bloom like explosions. Pure oxygen feeds combustion so rapidly that the difference between fire and detonation is measured in fractions of a heartbeat. But everything around him, his uniform, the plastic tubing, even the insulation, is now fuel. The heat climbs, the metal groans. Inside, the fire consumes the oxygen and replaces it with silence, still conscious. No one is told who will fly and who will not. You train like you'll orbit the Earth, but you may never leave the ground. It's a waiting game, and you wait quietly. His mood, stable, his appetite, normal. He loses track of time, but he maintains discipline. He knows it's a test. He knows they're watching. Just 15 days, sealed in a small, low-pressure chamber, breathing pure oxygen. It's not glamorous, but it's important. The spacecraft of the time, Vostok capsules, require exact environmental control. The Soviet space effort cannot afford doubt, fear, or bad press. Years later, Leonov would speak of him in interviews. Valentine, he said quietly, was the first to die in spaceflight. Even though he never flew, his fellow cosmonauts are warned not to speak his name. Cold, untouched, marked not by flag or footprint, but by the quiet knowledge of loss. His family is instructed to remain silent. He becomes, officially, non-existent. Sensors are removed from his chest and arms. Adhesive residue is cleaned with alcohol-soaked cotton pads. It's a mundane step, one of hundreds, those whose names were not shouted, those whose stories waited in the dark. These tests are meant to simulate the living conditions in orbit. The air smells of engine oil and damp earth. It's quiet. You wash in a tin basin with water that smells faintly of iron. Your breath fogs as you dress in standard issue coveralls. The records are unsealed. The story emerges quietly, without ceremony. MiGs and Yakovlevs, sleek, steel-bodied birds climbing against the clouds. Bondarenko crater. It is not visible from Earth, but it is there in silence. He is not a loud child. Teachers remember his stillness, his steady attention, his polite, quiet. He listens more than he speaks. As a teenager, he enrolls in a military pilot school. Long hours, early mornings, snow drills, maintenance shifts. By his early 20s, he has already earned a place in the Soviet Air Force. And in 1959, when the newly formed Cosmonaut Corps is recruiting from elite pilots, Valentine is quietly, efficiently selected. He is 23. Imagine yourself at the Star City training facility in 1960. The trees are tall and dark, pine needles thick on the ground. You wake up early, before dawn. The barracks are cold, no matter how many wool blankets you pile on. Training begins at 0600. You run, you climb. There is camaraderie, yes, but also distance. Bondarenko does not stand out in the usual ways. In March of 1961, Valentine is assigned to a routine isolation experiment. The room is small, not much bigger than a freight elevator. The walls are bare metal. For the first few days, there is monotony. He doesn't complain. His notes are precise. On the 15th day, he prepares to leave. Doctors come to begin the final procedures. But in a sealed chamber filled with near-pure oxygen, even mundane steps are dangerous. No one notices the cotton pad brush against the heating plate. It doesn't spark. It erupts. The fire moves instantly. In a normal room, flames spread in seconds. Valentine does not panic. He doesn't shout. He tries to smother the flame instinctively. Outside, technicians scramble to open the hatch, but it's sealed with bolts for pressure. It takes nearly a full minute to remove them. When they reach him, Valentine is badly burned. He is still alive. He does not scream. He apologizes over and over. He says he is sorry for ruining the experiment, for making a mistake. He says it was his fault. He is rushed to a hospital. There is little they can do. He dies later that evening. He is 24. There is no funeral, no announcement. His name is erased from the program. But memory is not so easily erased. The men who trained with him remember. Gagarin remembers. Lenov remembers. It is not until 1986, long after the Soviet Union's golden age of spaceflight has faded, that Valentine's name is made public. Today, there is a small crater on the far side of the moon named for him. Imagine that now, a circle of stillness etched into the lunar dust. Let his story drift with you now, not in sorrow, but in understanding. Every mission, every orbit, every step on the lunar surface stands on the quiet sacrifices of those who came before. Valentin Bondarenko, his voice is gone, but the silence he left behind is full of meaning, and it hums gently through the history of space. You are lying in bed. Somewhere beyond the thick curtain of sleep, you hear a faint voice, cracked, metallic. It fades in and out, like a distant radio station, not quite tuned. You can't tell what language it's speaking, but the sound tugs at something in you, a thread of curiosity and unease. Now imagine you are not in bed. Imagine you are in a cramped radio room in northern Italy. The year is 1961. It is late at night, and the room smells of coffee grounds and solder. On the table, a shortwave receiver hums gently, a red glow spilling from its dial. The air is thick with radio waves, with weather reports, coded military chatter, and somewhere among them, something else. You are the younger of two brothers, Giovanni and Achille Giudico Cordiglia, amateur radio operators, children of a cardiologist, enthusiasts. You've been listening for years, not just to music and Morse, but to the hidden signals of the space race. You know the frequencies, you know where to tune. You've recorded the beeping of Sputnik. You've tracked Vostok 1 as it circled the Earth, and now you listen every night, fingers poised on the dial, ears trained for something, anything unusual. And then, one night, it comes. A voice, a woman's voice, crackling, panicked. She's speaking Russian. The tone is wrong. She doesn't sound like a test signal. She sounds real, breathing hard, repeating words, something about fire, about heat, about re-entry, and then silence, no confirmation, no announcement, nothing in the Soviet press, no mention of a launch. What did you just hear? Was it a cosmonaut, a real one, or was it something else? This moment becomes the beginning of a strange trail, one filled with static, shadow, and unease. Over the years, the Giudico Cordiglia brothers claim to intercept several transmissions like this. Voices that do not match known missions, heavy breathing, labored speech, a heartbeat, a slow SOS, some last mere seconds, others stretch into a haunting few minutes, and then always nothing. They call them the lost cosmonauts, a term born not from confirmation, but from the void that follows. Let's drift back now to the 1950s. The Soviet space program was cloaked in secrecy. Unlike NASA, whose missions were public and broadcast live, the Soviets revealed only what they chose to. When a mission failed, it was erased. When a cosmonaut was lost, their name disappeared. The records were controlled, edited, made clean. This secrecy creates space, not in orbit, but in history, gaps, missing pieces, unnamed figures. And in that space, the lost cosmonaut theory takes root. Whispers suggest that before Yuri Gagarin became the first man in space, others had tried and failed. That experimental launches were conducted in silence. The capsules had burned up on re-entry or drifted lifelessly in orbit. That cosmonauts died alone, anonymously. Officially, there is no record of this, but unofficially, there are curious signs. In 1959, a high-ranking Czech communist named Vladimir Remek claimed he saw a list of Soviet cosmonaut candidates, one of whom disappeared before Gagarin's flight. In early 1961, Western intelligence detected radio signals that suggested a space launch, just days before Gagarin's successful flight. No launch was announced, nothing was acknowledged. And then, the Giudica Cordeglia tapes. They released 9 in total. One is dated May 1960. It contains a slow SOS in Morse code. The sender does not identify themselves. The tone is weary, like a message sent not for rescue, but for record. Another, from November 1960, features a voice counting down, then screaming. A launch gone wrong, perhaps, or something else. Then there is the most famous, the woman. February 1961. Repeating fragments in Russian. I am hot. I can see flame. Am I going to crash? Yes, yes, I feel hot. I will re-dash, enter, ... Silence. The tapes are strange, disturbing, but also hard to verify. Some believe they are hoaxes, that the brothers misinterpreted data or fabricated it for attention, that radio interference, signal bounce, or misaligned context created illusions. The voices, perhaps, are recordings of earthbound tests, or simple mishearings, but others aren't so sure. There is a quiet pattern in the early years of the Soviet space program. Cosmonauts whose training began, then stopped. Men who were in early photographs, then vanished from records. Ivan Ivanovich, the mannequin used in test flights, was presented in press photos like a real person, adding to the confusion. One such name is Vladimir Ilyushin, a respected test pilot. Some claim he launched into space days before Gagarin and crash-landed in China. The Soviets, they say, denied it to protect their image. Ilyushin later appeared with unexplained injuries and never spoke publicly about the claim. But Ilyushin never confirmed this, and no official documentation ever surfaced. Still, the questions linger. Could a cosmonaut have died in orbit and simply been erased? Could the Soviets have hidden these missions so well that only scraps, crackling signals on a shortwave receiver remain? If so, what becomes of those voices? Do they echo still among the static? Imagine the feeling of a capsule tumbling, systems failing, the blackness of space pressing in. No lights, no sound, just your voice, transmitted outward, unsure if anyone hears. The idea is not about certainty, it's about absence. There are no graves for these names, no wreckage, no data, just the silence after a scream, just the transmission that never concludes. It's important to say this. Historians largely consider the lost cosmonaut theory unproven. The tapes, intriguing though they are, have never been authenticated by independent experts. The Soviet program, while secretive, kept detailed logs that were later made public. There is no solid evidence, and yet, in the gentle hush of night, when the radio hums, when the tape reel spins, when no names are given, and no explanations come. The mind wanders to the lonely places between stars, to the space between truth and memory. Two voices, lost not in death, but in omission. Let those voices fade now. Let them recede into the static, not as fact, not as myth, but as possibility, as one of space history's quietest, strangest questions, one that hums on empty frequencies, just at the edge of sleep. The train is quiet as it glides through the forest. You sit by the window, watching the dark pine trees slide past. The compartment smells faintly of wool and cigarette ash. The rhythmic clatter of the tracks is soft, almost hypnotic. You've been told not to speak much, just to ride. You are on your way to a place that doesn't appear on most maps, a place wrapped in trees and guarded by silence. It is called Zvyostny Gorodok, Star City. And if you're a Soviet citizen, you may never hear that name spoken aloud. Star City exists outside the public eye. Tucked away just northeast of Moscow, it began as a remote training center in the early 1960s, when the space race was still hidden behind security fences and ceremonial smiles. From the outside, it doesn't look like much. A few concrete buildings, a long road curving into the forest, the occasional buzz of an unmarked vehicle. But once inside, the atmosphere changes. The air is still, ordered, and quiet in a way that suggests control more than peace. You are in the domain of the cosmonauts now, not the ones floating in orbit, but the ones between missions, the ones preparing, recovering, waiting, and always watching. Star City is a contradiction. It is a closed-off world, surrounded by barbed wire and guards in plain clothes, and yet it was, in its own strange way, a paradise. Not luxurious in the Western sense. There are no mansions, no gold fixtures, no wild extravagance, but by Soviet standards, it was something close to sacred. Apartments here had reliable heating. There were schools for cosmonauts' children, stocked with proper books and competent teachers. The grocery stores were better supplied. The rations arrived on time. There were swimming pools, cinemas, and saunas. Doctors lived next door. And most important of all, there was space to breathe. In a country often defined by shortages, Star City had consistency. You were looked after in every way. Your health, your food, your future, even your narrative. Because here, you weren't just a pilot. You weren't just a scientist. You were a symbol, a hero of the state, a living monument to Soviet technological power, discipline, and strength. And in exchange for that title, that mask, you were granted a strange kind of comfort. Not freedom, not truly, but comfort with conditions. In Star City, your days were tightly scheduled. Every morning might begin with medical checks, followed by survival training, followed by time in the centrifuge. Evenings were sometimes freer, a film screening, perhaps, or a gathering with fellow cosmonauts. But even those moments were observed. The walls had ears, as they say, and often you did not know whose they were. The KGB maintained a quiet presence here. You might never meet them directly, but they watched, they noted. They listened for signs of ideological drift, of complaints, of fatigue that went beyond the physical. Because you, as a cosmonaut, were not just a person. You were a message to the West, to the world, to your own people, that the system worked, that you were strong because of it, that you could survive what they could not. And so, in Star City, every comfort was matched by a reminder. The path to orbit began here, but so did the propaganda. You would pose for photos, attend state functions, appear in textbooks, even if you'd never flown. Children memorized your name. Songs were written, monuments were built. And all the while, back at your apartment, your boots might still be wet from survival training in the frozen woods. Your back might ache from hours in the simulator. Your fingers might still tremble from the centrifuge, and yet you smiled. Because here, in Star City, you were the future, or at least a version of it. Yuri Gagarin himself lived here. His dacha stood near the others, small, neat, and quiet. After his flight, he was celebrated beyond imagining, and yet those who knew him said he seemed restless, trapped. The state had made him too valuable to risk again, so he trained others. He smiled on camera, and he drank. In Star City, many drank, quietly, not to excess, at least not publicly, but often to blur the edges of duty, to soften the grip of expectation. Because life in a place like this was both elevated and enclosed. The forest outside the fences was dense, quiet, and full of shadows. You could walk there sometimes, if cleared, but there was always a line you could not cross. Over time, some cosmonauts would leave, reassigned, retired, sometimes forgotten. Others would come back changed. After a mission, there was fanfare, parades, medals, speeches, but then a kind of silence. No one ever talked about what space was really like, not publicly, not in detail, because space wasn't just a place, it was a narrative. And Star City helped craft that narrative, one quiet day at a time. You might not fly, you might train for years and be bumped off a mission at the last moment. You might live out your days here, orbiting a life that never quite launches. And yet you would still be a cosmonaut. You would still be watched, still celebrated, still held gently, firmly within the story. Even after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Star City endured. It changed, yes, became more open, more international. But echoes of the old days remained. The long corridors, the faded posters. Today, if you walk its grounds, you can see the memorials. Gagarin, Komarov, Dobrovolsky, Patsev. They stand still beneath the trees, carved in stone, surrounded by pine needles. And if you listen closely, there is still a hush to the place, a reverence, as if time itself moves more slowly here. Because this was never just a training center. It was a sanctuary, a stage, a prison, a dream, a town built for the astronauts of a vanished empire, who, for a few brief years, touched the sky and returned to wait for the next mission, the next order, the next silence. And so, as we come to the end of this long, quiet journey, let us leave Star City as we entered it. By train, the forest begins again, the trees close in, and behind you, the lights of a forgotten town flicker into the dark, where the rhythm of the past still hums quietly, like the low static of the stars. And now, the lights have dimmed, the capsule has been sealed, the hatch closed, the control room falls silent. You've walked through a world both harsh and hushed, through the sweat-soaked suits of training chambers, the flicker of dim consoles, the unseen labor behind every launch. You've worn the uniform of a Soviet cosmonaut, even if only in your mind. You've floated through their days, full of pressure, of repetition, of rules whispered through headsets and heard through layers of static. You've met the quiet ones, the overlooked, the men who didn't fly, or who flew only once and returned to silence. You've wandered past rusting satellites and wondered about the lonely signals sent by machines still orbiting above us, long after their creators have been forgotten. And finally, you've glimpsed the strange comfort of Star City, a place where the past lives quietly in the walls, where space is remembered not in monuments but in patterns. A town where heroes waited, walked, and waited again. Through it all, there was no glory as promised, no triumphant music, no cinematic fire, only endurance, only ritual, only the soft persistence of human effort, in tin cans, in tunnels, in training pools, in snow-covered woods, and soundless simulators. And maybe that's what makes this part of space history so deeply human. Not the rockets, not the slogans, but the waiting, the repetition, the unglamorous rhythm of preparation and patience. And now, in this quiet moment, that rhythm continues in you as you lie still, as the day fades behind you, as your thoughts begin to slow and drift and float, just as they did, just as they still do. In the low, distant hush of orbital silence, above and far away and gone. Sleep well, and thank you for journeying through the quiet truth of space. Good night.